Enjoy.
Could someone turn on the lights? Okay, they said we're doing this in the dark. Let me start. Is there any questions that anyone possibly has? Yes?
Were you actually flying back and forth constantly to all those locations?
The stuff in Mexico I didn't shoot. Crispy and James shot that, but everything else I shot. So my own stuff is like books, films, and then visual arts. So for me, all this stuff gets me lots of great access to art showings, and I get to, show my films in museums. More questions. Come on, I like questions.
Has somebody named this genre of art already?
Kind of like lowbrow art, art.
Well, besides that, is there something coming up that's
I mean, we try to do this thing where we're an art movement because we're naming ourselves so, but
Okay, so
historically it's the art historians that name it like 20 years after we're dead. We're kind of like the most arrogant group that we actually say, hey, we're an art movement, and if you don't like it, we don't really care what you think anyway.
I was just thinking that a way to find more of it, to search more of it.
I mean, you can search the Antagonist Movement.
Antagonist.
I'm on Facebook, and the Antagonist Movement is on Facebook. So if there's any artist that you actually like their work, they're very easily accessible. You can always email me, and I'll send you their info. And Miss?
Yeah, what do you think would happen if somebody from your group actually made it and you get accepted into museums and you become the establishment?
I'm ready for it. Like I say, bring it on. But we've had a few, my films have shown in the Brooklyn Museum, PS1. In the film, you see there was a part where we did the Queens Museum of Art. That's how we met Gabrielle, who actually helped us get to Ecuador. The Wichita Museum of Art. So we've done a lot of the art museums. We worked with over 3,000 artists, and then all of those artists are so young and each one of them are driven that they keep moving up, and as they move up in the contemporary art world, our position keeps getting better. Ted, who's in the film now, runs the Hal Happening Space, which is the new Lower East Side art gallery that features a lot of the old guard of the East Village art scene. I've already shown 2 films there, and we have a big show coming up there. The antagonist is the one who pushes the protagonist to action. So we're not trying to be the hero, we're trying to get the hero to go off and do the adventure. I mean, we actually have a whole manifesto too that is the more deeper sense of this that you can find online if you go to antagovision.com. Yes?
The animation was wonderful. I really loved it. And was it done just for the movie, or is that some way incorporated in the art shows? Or?
The animation, most of it was made just for the movie, except for the part where you see Brother Mike Cohen, the guy who records his family. I made an 11-minute short for him that we're trying to do is to pitch to a network to get a series out of. And also the gentleman in the end that you saw, Arturo Vega, who passed away, who was a part of our group too. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he was the artistic director for a band called the Ramones. He did the famous logo for the Ramones. Was a huge influence, not just as their artistic director. He brought a lot of different artistic elements to the band. His loft space was the rehearsal space. He was a member of our group and a bigger part of it. And I guess, I don't know, he was in his mid-60s, I think, when he passed away, 2013. Arturo he's from Mexico, so he really wanted us to focus on more of Latin America, a real kind of interest in what we're doing down there. Unfortunately, he passed away in the middle of us making this film. So you'll kind of see there's a lot of references to the Ramones in it hidden. We're all wearing Ramones shirts, throughout, and that's all on purpose because he gave us all the shirts. In some of the scenes you see the alley, and he's painting is the alley behind CBGB's. It's also the same alley where Ramones' record cover was taken. The interview you see with Chris, and he's in a park that's another Ramones record cover was shot in that same park. So there's kind of a lot of reference to Arturo. And even the alleyway, it's not really mentioned in the film, but that was a poem written by Dee Dee Ramone about the passing of Joey Ramone, was given to Arturo. Arturo gave it to Raul, who was using that as the reference for that piece, and Arturo literally died right in the middle of us making that, so I don't think Arturo ever even saw the end of it. Yes, in the back?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say out loud that I was just so struck by how you all support each other, and that seems like a paradigm shift for a lot of sections of the world, you know, and I just commend you. It's really inspiring.
For a lot of these people, we're like their family. It's a long process, so we meet an artist, we first get along with them, the personalities work, we become friends, and then we provide them work, and we provide them spaces to show, and then mentoring. So after years of building up these relationships, we become pretty tight. But you know, when you watch these films, you would think there's a whole backstory, that's what my third book is going to be about.
How many of you are there?
It's a revolving class of people, so on average there's about 40 people, and that's broken up, that very divided division. So there's like a group that just does the fanzines, me and 3 others do the fanzines together, editing, staff, and layout. Then we have a writer's night, which is brother Mike Cohen and Richard run that independently. And then the art side is really me and Shannon. Yes?
So did you say there were like 3,000 artists?
There's 3,000 artists that we have associated with and worked with. So if you put together, like we ran a gallery in the back of a bar where we would show between 5 and 6 artists every week. Every 2 months we would do a group show between 20 and 60 artists. We do a public access show where we do studio visits and tours and stuff like that. We do a writer's night that still goes on, which had a revolving thing of probably like 5 or 10 different people every couple of months. We had a music night, which was on Mondays, so we had bands come in, thing in the fanzine, so there would be different artists submitting to the fanzine and writers. So if you put that all together, over like 15 years, that's about 3,000 artists.
Do you like go around the country and have exhibits or anything like that? Like in Maine, there's probably a couple of places that would like to have you, like Space Gallery in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, any place that kind of reaches out to us, like we try to accommodate as much as possible. Like we are doing Houston, Texas. We try to do an international show every couple of years, and then we do, shows around the U.S. when they come up. So yeah, if you have connections, please, send them our way. Online, we have like hundreds of shorts, videos, and stuff like that. There's one point where you saw there was all these like old shows. We have a public access show in Manhattan that has probably 60 half-hour shows of all of the Thursday night.
So do people become a part of the group just through connections and like reaching out and like?
Yeah, typically people will do like fanzine stuff first. They'll submit work to the fanzine, and the fanzine's usually based on a theme. So we'll take like a writer or an artist that fits the theme, and we'll keep them in mind for other ones if it doesn't. We ran through our friends pretty quickly, and then their friends, and then their friends. So we started doing Craigslist ads, looking for artists. And then that brought in actually artists from around the world that were coming to New York saying like, I'm going to be here and I want to show. And then it's a mix of us looking and then people also finding out. So these films act as a calling card. Me or one of the other guys tries to go to many of the screenings as we can. And that's why I'm up here, because it's important to not just show the film, but to be like, hey, I'm here. I'm very easy to connect to. But the other big chunk of it is if we get along with you, because it's a social art movement and we want to not invest a lot of time in people that are, jerks. So you got to have like good artwork. You have to be someone we can get along with, and you have to be professional too. So it's also like someone we can grow with. There's not much it's going to do for us if we find a famous artist who's already successful and done everything. We provide work for the artists that are in New York. We provide residencies. We provide them shows and mentoring. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in New York. I worked at gallery as an art handler, and it's a very closed-off system. From working in the galleries, you could say like, how can a gallery afford this space and pay my salary and everybody else? Is that they have to have artists that can cover that.
Has the movement spawned any copycat groups in other communities or other major cities?
Well, we don't call them copycat groups. We want them to do it. We try to set up a system and then we say, this is a good thing to have. It would be bad if we were saying like, don't do this. So we want people to do exactly what we're doing. So the group in Texas, actually, I think he kind of says it in the beginning, it's called Stout City, and they now have art shows, writers, fanzines, and all that based on the work we did with them. But our big thing is we always say to them is like, hey, start your own group. We'll totally give you all the advice and all that to do it, but do not name it the same thing. And that's because, like, again, blowback. We have A lot of our guys are street artists and they get arrested. We're trying to get grants and we try to say, just always name it your own independent group. We'll give you all the advice on how to do it your own. And also, they should be naming their own thing. If they're going to build up a bigger reputation and all that thing, it really wouldn't help them if it was just like the antagonist movement. That would only help us. Wherever there's a space, there's probably somebody who will let you put up work. And then once you do that on a regular basis, you build a community. I did want to add, though, there are a few people that have become successful. Like I know you saw there was a clip of Jonah Hill in there in the film, but Jonah Hill wasn't just somebody who came in and did stand-up and was famous before that. He was a kid off the street that came in and started reading in our group. We moved him up to headliner, actually knocking brother Mike Cohen out of his top position, which he wasn't happy about. And then Dustin Hoffman's kids came in and said, I want you to meet my dad. They brought him home and it was like, oh, that's Dustin Hoffman and he's doing a movie called I Love the Huckabees, which was Jonah Hill's first movie and then took off. And now we don't see him at all. So I think that would be the second part. Did they ever help? No, it doesn't. On TV, he's always like, I got discovered at a bar. And I'm like, the bar had nothing to do with it, man. Yeah, we embrace mainstream. The whole point is to try to make it something unique that changes everything. So if we make into mainstream status, that's fine, as long as you sort of keep the integrity of what you're doing. Yes?
Do you sell your fanzine or do you give it away?
We try to give it away as much as possible. Like a fanzine in its most basic terms, as they've kind of explained in the film, is like a fan of something. So typically the fanzine is like a secondary thing to whatever your passion is. I'm just very much more passionate about fanzines because for me personally, that's what led me to doing all of these art projects and everything else. I mean, I'm dyslexic, so I was told my whole life, you're not going to be a writer, you're not going to be able to do all this stuff, don't even think about it, teased by my peer group. And, for me, when I got into punk rock, the very first things I saw was these fanzines where they're misspelled and it doesn't even matter, and people still embraced it, and I started doing that fanzine in 1988, and that sort of spawned everything else and gave me the courage to go on and not worry about what other people thought of my spelling ability or any of that stuff. I try to say to the artists, yes, it's a fanzine, but we do have a lot of galleries that we put that zine in for free, and Printed Matter and all these places that are kind of more established. Used to get letters from John Wayne Gacy and a lot of people like that. When you put a fanzine in the prison system, it'll float around for basically until it evaporates. In Maximum Rock and Roll and Fact Sheet 5, which were old fanzine kind of review things, I would say free for prisoners, get letters in my home address because I didn't have a P.O. box. So once we got the letter from John Wayne Gacy, my roommates were like, can you please get a P.O. box? Because once the serial killers are writing, in New York City, you see this thing where everybody sort of labels their group, and if you don't fit within this group, you're cast out. And our focus is purely on trying to get people the ability to create something new. And if we're pushing people out, we probably will be limiting ourselves. In the downtown art scene, a lot of the people we work with are a good about 10, 20 years older than us. They look at us as carrying on that same sort of baton that used to represent the East Village that has been dying out in a lot of ways.
You have a formal background in filmmaking? It was a wonderful film.
Yeah, I did school visual arts. I was fine arts and then switched to film, and then got my master's in media communication at the New School. And if you guys like the film, please let people know. And we're easily, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you see me around, I love talking about it. If anyone wants a book,